Hey everyone, I hope you're having a good day. Today I want to talk about an idea that I've been thinking about for a while, which is what if you had to use alt charge in order to swap heroes mid-game? In some ways, this is how Overwatch already works. If you swap, you'll be left with at most 30% alt charge, but that is a penalty or a cost only if you swapped with greater than 30% alt charge. Most players know about this, and so the optimal strategy is usually to ult first and then swap after you die, essentially allowing you to swap for free. The hypothetical system that I'm proposing would change the cost to a flat percentage, so that swapping would always result in the exact same penalty at all times. Just for example, suppose the cost was 40%. If you had 40% alt charge, swapping would bring you down to 0%, and if you were at say 90% charge, swapping would bring you down to 50%. Now, I'm not saying that it's a good idea or that it's a bad idea, and it probably won't be implemented anyway, but I wanted to bring it up as a topic just for fun and theorize about how it might affect the game. One way it could benefit the game is by reducing the number of swaps overall. I think we've all seen players who swap constantly throughout a game in an effort to give themselves an advantage. It can be annoying and even cringe to see someone who is unable to develop any meaningful strategies beyond their hero choice, and can't play without having an advantage over the enemy team. Adding a flat cost would make people think twice before deciding to swap, and give those who don't swap at least a feeling that they didn't just get countered for nothing, which is how Overwatch works right now. There is never a reason not to swap, which is one reason that swapping is so prevalent, at least in public matches. In game strategy, decisions that are interesting involve some kind of give and take, which is what allows us to theorize about whether certain decisions were worth it. As it works right now, the decision of swapping itself is often a free decision because it is never a mistake to swap, or conversely that it is always a mistake not to swap. In theory, Overwatch heroes are supposed to be designed in such a way that swapping is not an integral part of game strategy because the developers want every character to be viable. And although this is in theory excellent, in practice I think it might be an unachievable goal, and a goal that only gets more impossible as time goes on. This is because new characters get introduced regularly. Although I agree that new characters are great, it inevitably results in a game where hero choice becomes more and more impactful. Making every hero generally viable with a cast of nearly 40 heroes is just not possible. How can you have 40 unique characters and yet have every character be playable against every other unique character? Either the heroes are unique enough so that they bring something new to the table, or every hero is similar enough so that there is never a reason to pick one over the other. Since Overwatch is definitely the kind of game where we want unique heroes, the task of creating a perfectly balanced roster is just unthinkable. As we add more heroes, we add more unique mechanics, and therefore more unique hero interactions. The more interactions there are, the more ways there are for certain heroes to be on the losing end of an interaction. As such, hero choice becomes more important, and the rock paper scissors meta that most people seem to dislike only gets stronger. And I think adding cost to swaps might work to counteract this effect, because there would be an advantage and a disadvantage to swapping or not swapping. An added benefit of this is that late swaps become no more punishing than an earlier swap. For example, right now, swapping when you have ult or when you're close to ult is extremely penalizing, to the point that many players will choose deliberately to stay on a hero they don't want to play anymore, just so they won't waste their ult. If swapping had the same penalty at all times, there would be less of a reason to delay a swap in favor of an ult, since the delay on your next ult would be the same. A clear problem that you might see with this idea is what if you have less alt charge than the cost of a swap? A possible solution for this would be allowing there to be what I call alt charge debt, or another way to think about it as negative alt charge. If you have less charge than the cost of a swap, your charge would be reduced to a negative number. This sounds weird, but it would mean that the penalty for a swap would be the same in that it would simply delay your next alt, regardless of when you swapped, and swap spamming would delay your alt until you decided to commit to a hero. With this solution, it raises another problem regarding early swaps. A negative charge mechanic might give the team who by chance picks the better heroes out of spawn an even larger advantage over the enemy team. For example, suppose you picked Junkrat, but then you see that the enemy players picked Pharah and Echo, and now you realize that you probably need to swap. You lose the first fight, but if you swap, not only do you have an attacker's advantage, you'll also have an ult disadvantage. A possible solution would replicate how the system works right now by giving early swapping a bit of a discount. Right now, swapping below 30% incurs no penalty, and so losing the first team fight gives the losing team a slight leg up by allowing them to swap to better heroes. To make a similar system, you could have the cost of swapping ramp up from some minimum percent to some maximum percent over the course of say 1 to 2 minutes, allowing players who accidentally picked an incredibly suboptimal hero to make a correction. As Overwatch progresses and the rock paper scissors inevitably becomes more prevalent, I think considering how swaps are handled might be a real consideration that needs to be made. If you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you for watching and consider subscribing and leaving a like and comment to support the channel. I hope you have a wonderful day.